Well, hello YouTubers, and welcome back to the next episode of Perestroika, Resurrecting the Deckel. Today we're going to put the work table back on, and what I have to do first is take the cross slide off the knee here, and then attach it to the table as it's upside down. It's sitting over there on a bucket, and then reattach it. And for that I have to take off two castle nuts on the shaft of the cross slide here with hook wrenches like this in order to get the spindle out. And likewise, putting the spindle back in is going to take the same tools. Now, interestingly enough, there is a there's a pin that goes into this sleeve on the spindle. Spindle. Where do I have my spindle? Must be downstairs still. Oh, no, it's in the cart there. Anyway, there's a tapered pin that goes in. Let's see here. This is the mount for the hand crank on the left-hand side of the table. And then there's this little dinky tapered pin. You can see it in the bag there. And the taper's pretty small. So I marked it with the Sharpie. I can still see some of the marks here, so I'm going to remark it so that when it goes back together I know exactly where the pin will go, or what the orientation of the pin will be. You stick it in backwards, of course it won't go through, and if you have the holes misaligned, again it won't go through. So you got to make sure you get those holes lined up perfectly, and for that I had to mark the holes. So let me get the spindle taken off here off camera. I was gonna, I still got to put in a grease zerk on this. The old grease zerks on here are these type. These little funnel type grease zerks where you use a grease gun with a point. And a lot of them were damaged, so I had to replace them. Ordered up a little baggie of them on eBay, and I still have this one here to replace, so that's going to get done probably off camera at another time. I'll see if I can't do a short video on that just to show you guys how those things are constructed. There's really not much to them. They're not threaded. There's just a hole drilled into the housing, and to get them out is kind of tricky. What I had to do was take and put the part in the vise, put it on the mill, and then run a drill bit into it. Of course, the centering feature of a drill, was pretty handy. And so what had happened, you drilled into it, and the old part would come out, and upon pulling out, of course, the whole housing and everything would come out. And then in order to get it back in, I just left the piece in the vise, and I had to make the seat a little or on some of the parts here. Let's see, I think it's on this one over here. Yes. In order to get this one in here and get it to sit down, I had to drill out a larger hole. A seat for this zerk, so that way it would set down not quite flush, but further in, so that it wouldn't get damaged or break off like the old one did. And so, in order to get that centered up, what I did is I put the drill bit in backwards, so that there wasn't a cutting tip on the end, but the butt end of it sticking out, and into the mill into a collet, 6mm. And then just kept on centering it until the bit would slip in to the hole, you know, real easy without hitting the sides or without a whole lot of resistance or deflection. And then I had that center, and then I could drill out the seat a little bigger with a end mill, with an 8mm end mill, and get that all, and then just put the new zerk in, and that was the end of that. So there's really not much to it. Like I said, I'll show the other part later on once I get this thing off. But for right now, we're just going to get the cross slide off and get to cracking here. So let me pull these nuts off here and off camera. I'll show you where, well, of course, this is essentially the same thing. You got these retainer nuts here, and you can take the backlash out of this spindle with this. This is the retainer on the outside of the table, and then of course it goes through. And then you can adjust these with those hook wrenches. And oops, get it into the focus here, dummy. And then you can adjust these to where there's no backlash on the spindle, or very little. You know, you're always going to have some, but you can eliminate as much backlash as you want to with this, and make it as tight as you want to make it without too much trouble. So this is kind of a neat setup. Took and polished the shaft up on the lathe, and it was bent, of course, from the fall off the truck. So I had to straighten it out as good as I could. Got it fairly close. It's not 100%, but it'll work for this application. And so now it's time to tear into this guy and see what kind of crazy stuff we can do. So let me bring you back when I get this. Now if I can find my remote. Oh, stuck in my pocket. I'll bring you back when this is all, when the cross slide's off. Okay, now I'll get the thing set off, the cross slide off the table, or off the knee. So now we're going to reassemble the whole thing and put it back on. Okay, there's my mark. Mr. Bozo just paid a visit. You're not supposed to put this on until afterwards. Die. Count on that guy to show up whenever you don't want him to. What I do need to do is take these castle nuts off. Okay, now this goes in here. Castle nuts. I'm just going to screw this in as far as I need to get it started. So now we're going to, here's some alignment pins here. One of the pins got bent when I pulled this thing apart because it was so tight, it just did not want to come off. So now, take the persuader. Okay, now we need to find a mark on here. I'm thinking this is the side. Let's see if this cross slide will flip over here, or if I have to remember. All right, I can pull it off. Nope, I'm going to have to slide it on. Okay, that goes on this side. So if this is the front, so now back to the pin and here's the pin, here's the sleeve. I just had it here. Fuck all over. Kind of want this shit out. Okay, here's our sleeve. Now to put this on the same way as on the other side. These pins like to bend a little when you pull these covers off. Okay. Something just doesn't look quite right. Okay, now sleeve, hole, and for this we're going to need both cranks. Because now it's time to get the pins lined up, or the pinholes lined up. Okay. There's the pinholes. Now for the pin. Okay, now it's real hard to tell on these pins which way the taper is at, so you gotta look at them real close. And we're not quite lined up. Maybe that's got it. Nah. Okay, now I need a drift pin. Punch. And there we go. All seated. Now time for the nuts here, the retainer nuts. I'm sweating, I got sweat dripping off my nose. Onto the ways of the machine, that's always good, handy, isn't it? So, now I'm going to set this. God damn sweat dripping everywhere. It doesn't help that my glasses are not staying put either. Nope, that's too tight. I don't want it that tight. Give it a smidge. That's what I hate about these fucking wrenches. If you don't have just the right size, they won't stay on, the hook won't stay on, and then they have a tendency to slip off and strip the groove. So enough of that happy horse shit for a while. Now let's bring on our slide, line the holes up. Two more of these wonderful screws. Okay, now to stick this critter back on here, and hopefully everything will fit like it's supposed to. Let's wipe off the ick and putty here. Put a little bit of Wiener Schneider on the ways. Try this one more time. Okay, we got smoothness. Okay, this is like action like glass, super smooth. So now a little bit of the Wiener slider on here. As you can see, this has gotten a little bit rusty. And I put a little sewing machine oil on here to kind of clean things up a little bit, or loosen up the crud, which it has, although not completely to my liking. But this machine is going to get a total work over once I get it back to the States, or if I have to sell it, whoever buys it can overhaul it. But for right now, it's just gonna get thrown together back in a somewhat working mechanical order without the motor. The motor's gonna stay off until the machine arrives at its final destination. So, yep. Okay. Now for the gib. And again, this gib has holes that are angular to the slant, so they have to go in a certain way. I've already, in order to get this off, there's some wipers on here, and I had to take those out before I could take this cross slide off. Again, the movement's just as smooth as glass. So I'm turning in the Gibbs set screws right now. And with that little bit of oil on there, it just slicker and snot on the doorknob. Very smooth. I got some wobble here, so we'll correct the wobble. Lots of travel on that screw. So now we're going to take out the play in the top slide here, and all you do is there's two set screws here for the tightening up the gibs. Okay, it's a little stiff. I've got about 1/8 of a turn of backlash here, which is fine. I can always adjust that out later. So that's that. So now just another skosh down here, and we should be good to go. Well, YouTubers, it's back together. The table slides back and forth, knee goes up and down, everything's working like it should, at least without power. So it's time to break out a beer and celebrate a little bit. This has been a challenge to say the least. Here's a few of the broken bits that are still hanging around. The motor's going to get mounted on once I get it stateside. Now I'm going to put this thing on a pallet here and get it ready for shipment so that I can finish the restoration of it once it gets back to the States, and then go from there. So, here's a special thanks to Stefan Godeswinder for his invaluable assistance. I thank you very much, Stefan. I couldn't have done it without you. Like I said before, if there's any thoughts, comments, questions, put them in the comment section below, and we'll see you on the next go-around.